All right, guys, so we're making progress and let's continue. Now, one of the things that we want to be able to do when a user creates an account, you may not do it, like it's just something I consider a good user experience. When a user registers on your platform, you want to also be able to sign them in immediately, and so that they can get to start using your platform. Some people would like to maybe refer them back to the login page, but I don't see the point because they are going to log in with the same credentials anyway. So why don't you save them that maybe 30 seconds or 1 minute of extra delay before accessing your application? So in my opinion, I just feel like, okay, a user has signed up, they've added their username, their email, their password, just log them in immediately. So that's what we're going to be able to do in this video. Now, what is the tool we're going to use to log the user in or to sign the user into our application? That is a tool called JSON Web Token. So what you can do is, I've already opened that up here. So if you go to jwt.io, JWT is an acronym for JSON Web Token. You would see more information about what this is. So it says JSON Web Token are an open industry standard. I'm just going to skip this code here. So they are an open industry standard method for representing claims securely between two parties. Now, the way I can explain this is I'll just try to simplify it a little bit. So when they say two parties, just think of it as your front end and your back end. So your front end, your user uses the front end to make a request to the back end, which has your database and the rest of them. So the user makes that request by providing you their username and their password. So what you do is that when they try to sign in, the first thing you do is you check your database if that user exists. And if they exist, you then issue them a token, which is this JSON Web Token. And it's that token that will enable them or give them the right to access their data on the back end. So you see that we're going to generate JSON Web Token and we're going to use it to verify that a user is correctly logged in with the correct details. All right, so that's basically what it is. It helps us manage our users, and this particular website was created by Auth0. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to install JSON Web Token. So I will come to my second terminal here and I'll say npm install, and it's JSON Web Token, like so. It's a long word, so just go ahead and hit enter and that should install. So let's just give it a couple of seconds. Aha, so it has finished installing, and like I always like to do, let's confirm. So you see here we now have JSON Web Token. Great. So I'll come to my user controller and I would first import it. So let's come up here and I'll say const, I'll call it JWT. That's going to be equal to, so let's require and JSON Web Token. So hopefully we should be able to, oh, I think I may need to type it out myself. Oh, okay, that's because I did not put my quote. So if you just start typing JSON Web Token, it will just come up. Great. Now we need to write a function that will create a token for our user using the user ID. So every user has an ID. Every data in our MongoDB database has an ID. So what I'm going to do is I'll create that function to generate the token. I'll create it outside of this register user. The reason is that we're also going to need to use that functionality to generate a token when the user wants to log in. So remember, this is register user function. Later on, we're going to create a function, a controller function to log in the user, and that user is also going to generate a token, or so let's come here and let's create a function that will generate a token. So here I'll just create an arrow function and I'll call that function generate token. Okay, now that function, we want to generate a token for the user with the user ID. So we're going to pass an ID parameter here. Now there's one more thing we need actually to create a token, and that is known as a secret. a token secret. So that I will create inside of my .env file. So here I'll come here and say I'll call that JWT secret. So let's do JWT underscore secret. And this, like I said, this is what you're going to use to create your token. So it can be anything, it can be something complex, okay? But I'll just keep mine simple. I'll just say Zeno 123, but just make sure that it's really complex, like a password. You can even use a password generator for this. It can be, something very complex. So let's save that, and I'll come back to my user controller. So now I have my JWT secret in my .env file. Let's go ahead and generate the token. I'll come here and say the way you generate the token is I'll just return, and then I'll say jwt.sign. Okay, open a parenthesis. Now this is going to take some arguments. So the first is, what do you want to create the token with? Like I said, we want to create the token with an ID, so that's going to go inside this object. The next is to slot in our JWT secret, which is what we're going to use, another tool that we're going to use to create this token. So remember, that's in our .env file. So we got to say process.env, and then we're just going to point to JWT underscore secret. Okay, the last piece of data is, when do you, well, not the last, but the next piece of data is, when do you want this token to expire? In other words, how long do you want it to last? Well, for simplicity's sake, I'll say that I want the user to be logged in for 1 day. So after 24 hours, this token would expire, and if they come back to the website, they would need to log in again. And that's very similar to what MongoDB has. So MongoDB, every 24 hours, it will automatically log you out. In other words, the token would expire, and if you come back, you'll be required to log in again. So here I'll just say expires in. The name of the property is expires in. That's, oh sorry, it needs to be small letter, sorry, expires, yeah, so that's it, in, and that's even camel casing. Then now you just specify how long. So here I'll just open my quote and say 1 day. So that's 1 and D, that's all. So now this function will generate a token every time we call it. Now let's test it out and see. So I will come down to this point here. So now before I create a user, I'll generate a token for that user. So let's come down here, and I'll just add a comment and say generate token, and then I'll call the function to generate the token. So I'll come here and say, I'm trying to hit tab but it's not responding. Okay, let me just, so here I'll call the function, I'll say const, I'll put it inside a variable token, and that's going to be equal to generate token. Good. Now this generate token, remember we said that it should have an ID, so we're just going to use the user ID as the argument here to generate the token. So how we're going to do that, I'll just come here and say I'll just pass the user ID. So it needs to be under this user, okay, because this is where we create the user. So after we've created the user, I'll just generate the token. So let me cut this out, Control X. All right, so after I create the user, I'll generate the token with the user ID. So paste that in, and then I'll just pass the user dot underscore ID, because it's actually underscore ID that we have in the database. Now I'll say that if the user was successfully created, I'm returning all of this. One other extra thing I want to return now is the token. So just to be sure that we created the token successfully. So I'll go ahead and save this, and we're going to create yet another user to see if we're going to get a token back. So I'll come here and bring this up, and then I'll create my next user, which is user 3. Fingers crossed, let's send. Okay, voila. So you see here, we now have all the details about this user. So this is user 3, but we now have an additional detail, which is a token. So it's this long piece of, string, right? Now this long piece of string can be decrypted with the information we specified. So if I want to access this token, like, and I have this, let me show you, and I have my JWT secret and the user ID, I can decrypt that token on jwt.io. All right, so but technically this is how you can generate a token, whether it's when you're registering or when you're logging in the user. All right, so in the next one we're going to now see how we can use this token to log the user into our application. See you there.